Okay, now you know how the Gerschenkron model of growth for a country works. No, you don't know how it works? You have no idea what I'm talking about? Okay, well, if you don't know what I'm talking about, then make sure you go watch the series that I'm creating. Here's a link to it right above. It's all about the downfall of China. Start at the beginning, watch those videos, and come back to this one. And also check out the Macro Ops article that goes into all of these topics in more depth. I'm gonna link to it in the description and the comments, so go do that too. But in this video, I'm gonna show you how China has followed that same Gerschenkron model that we talked about, except on steroids. And remember, this is the same model that led to a collapse for every country that tried it before China. So yeah, your best bet is that we're gonna see the same thing happen to China too. But I'm gonna show you how, so let's get into it. Okay, so if you remember, the first part of the Gerschenkron model is when the government enacts laws that reduces the amount of money going to households. That way they can't use that money for consumption. Instead, the money is used by the government for investment into infrastructure and export-oriented businesses. So here's how China did this. They actually put a hidden tax on households. And the hidden tax was that they kept interest and deposit rates below growth and inflation rates. So in the early 2000s, the GDP growth rate of China was 18% and inflation was 10%. But the lending rate was only 6% and the deposit rate was only 2.5%. And you're probably like, okay, AK, that's cool, that's a bunch of numbers. But those numbers are why this Chinese man is so sad. See, basically the government made it so that you didn't get anything for putting your money into the bank. Inflation was higher than the return you were getting, so it basically ate it all away. So being a saver really sucked. And that's what all the households in China, including this guy, they were all savers. And they weren't even allowed to be borrowers. They didn't even have access to those markets. So that's why they're so sad. Because if you were a borrower, then life was pretty great. You could essentially borrow money for free because inflation, again, was so much higher than the lending rate. So you barely had to do anything and you could easily pay back anything you owed because of inflation. And guess who the borrowers were in this scenario? The government and businesses. They were real happy. Don't worry, friend. He'll get better. Cheer up. It's not gonna get better. Just don't tell that guy. See, it's estimated that with this strategy, the government was able to transfer 5 to 8% of GDP a year from the households to the businesses and government itself, which is a huge amount of money. And as the Gerschenkron model shows, this strategy is actually very effective in the beginning stages. And that's why it's been so effective for China over the last 30 years. And it was especially effective because before that, China had 40 years of Maoism. This guy. So there was tons of room for actual productive investment after everything he did, with the famines and the cultural revolutions and all those other crazy decisions. It's a miracle they even came back, but you know, that's a topic for another time. But check out this chart. It shows that with this strategy, China increased its market share of world exports tenfold over the last 3 decades. So they only made up 2% of exports in 1990, but today they make up 21%. That's a huge increase. And if you want to see their growth in a different way, look at this chart. It compares China back in 2000 to China today. And you can see that today, China accounts for over 40% of global fixed investment and commodity consumption, which is insane. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if China's growth slows down for any reason? Just look at the commodity space alone. What would reducing demand do to commodity prices? Or even within commodities, just look at copper. China accounts for over half of the entire global demand for copper. So if they have a structural slowdown in growth, what happens to copper prices? Well, you know, that's all just foreshadowing for a future video. You can bet we're gonna talk about it in this series. So make sure you subscribe so you see that next video. So eventually, just like everyone else who followed the Gerschenkron model, China's investments became unproductive. All that low-hanging fruit was picked and their potential was maxed out. And for China, that happened a long time ago. But just like in every case we've seen before this, they wanted to keep going anyway. And that's because the government officials, the state-owned enterprises, the property developers, all these big guys were getting rich off this huge boom. So why would they want to stop? Of course they don't. They want to keep the party going. You know, they want to double down. So they did double down, and since 2008, the Chinese economy has added over $12 trillion of new debt. So that's roughly the size of the entire US banking sector back in 2008. China quadrupled the size of their own banking system in less than a decade. And now today, they have the largest financial system in the world based on total assets. And it's estimated, because, well, you can't get a real number for Chinese stuff because all the accounting is so jacked up over there, but it's estimated that their total debt to GDP is over 300% now. And for some context, Japan Japan's bubble peaked when their debt to GDP ratio hit 220%. Thailand peaked at 180%, and the US peaked at 180% also before the 2008 crisis. So like I said, China is doing everything on steroids. It's go big or go home, I guess. But remember, with the Gerschenkron model, all this debt continues to pile up, and pretty soon the servicing costs, which are the debt payments you gotta make, they become much larger than the country's actual growth rate. And this becomes a problem because you're spending more than you could pay off. In China right now, their interest costs on their debt is at 16% of GDP. That's way higher than the annual 6% growth that they're getting. So they're at the point where they're just drowning in the debt pool. So really, like, we have to wonder, what are they doing with all this money? Well, obviously they're investing in dumb, stupid stuff. And you've heard the examples before of things like ghost cities, but I'm gonna give you a few more for fun. So China, by this point, has built over 30 million square feet of office space. That's literally enough space to build a 5x5 cubicle for every man, woman, and child in the entire country, which actually might not be a bad thing, because then all those child laborers making those Nikes might actually get some office space. You know, that's a plus. China has also accounted for 63% of the total money created globally between 2007 and 2015. So people are always complaining about the US printing money nonstop, but look at China. They make us look great. By far the best examples of all the dumb spending they've done are the replica cities that they keep building. So here is a full-scale replica of the White House that they built in one of their provinces. Why did they build it? Who knows, but at least it increases GDP, right? And it gives Kim Jong-un a place to play dress up. So really, it's a win-win. And here is one of the 3 replicas that they have of the Niagara Falls. Yes, they have 3 full replicas in different provinces. Big fans of Canada over there, eh? And of course, they have a beautiful Eiffel Tower in a province they call Little Fake Paris, where barely anybody lives. I assume they built that in honor of Les Mao or Hong Hong Ho. Man, I wish I could do a Chinese-French accent fusion, but I can't. But if I could, I'd probably be a comedy superstar just worshipped by the masses. Or my channel could be taken down because I offended 2 cultures at the same time. We'll never know. But anyway, what's next for China? It has to rebalance, right? They were supposed to shift from an investment-based economy to a consumption-based economy, but never did. Then they piled up all this debt that they need to work out. So something's gotta give. And remember, we know that either way, no matter what they do, this rebalance is gonna be painful. But they get to choose whether they want it swift and violent or long and grinding. So what is China gonna do? Well, that's what we're gonna talk about in our next video. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that bell so you get a notification when it comes out. You want that email sent straight to your inbox so you can watch it right away. And hopefully I'm explaining all this stuff okay. If you have any questions though, and maybe don't understand something, make sure you comment below. I'll try to answer your questions there, or I might just make another video combining a bunch of questions. We'll see what happens. And also, if you want to learn more, make sure you check out that Macro Ops article about all of this. Again, the link is going to be in the description and the comments. Go read that. So subscribe to this channel, and in the meantime, stay fallible out there, investors. Bye.